It's Tuesday. It's after midnight. And you are watching Abstract Passages with Ben and Chris. And tonight we're going to be reading from the short story Invisible Planets by Hao Jingfang, which you can also find translated into English in the compilation Invisible Planets, translated and edited by Ken Liu. Chris, take it away.
Do you like these stories?
Yes. And no. Why is every planet filled with visitors from across the stars? I don't like it. It makes them seem like zoos.
You're right. I don't like it either. The uniqueness of each planet disappears over time in this manner, like a fingerprint being rubbed away. All right, let's hear some stories about real natives. Amayachi and Iowahu. Let me tell you about two planets still ruled by their original inhabitants. On each, there are two different intelligent species. Yet each species believes itself to be the only master of its respective world. Amayachi orbits a double star. One, a bright blue giant. The other, a dim white dwarf. The two are similar in mass, but differ widely in volume and the type of emitted radiation. So Amayachi's orbit is shaped like an irregular gourd. It dances a waltz along the hyperbolic paraboloid of the gravitational fields of the two stars. Whenever Amayachi is near the blue giant, it enters a long summer. But when it's near the white dwarf, it enters an equally long winter. The summer is when the planet's flora multiply and grow and stretch their vines like madness. In winter, most are dormant, and only a few hardy weeds quietly bloom over the empty earth. Summer and winter. In each season, Amayachi is ruled by a different species. One dances through the lush forests of summer. The other marches alone over the barren plains of winter. The summer Amayachins live in houses made of woven vines, and when the weather turns cold, the houses disappear as the vines wither and die. The winter Amayachins live in caves dug into thick mountains, and when the weather turns hot, the mouths of the caves are hidden behind dense clumps of grass and fern, leaving no visible trace. Whenever the summer Amayachins are about to hibernate, they secrete a liquid covering to protect themselves and sink underground. The liquid stimulates a kind of insect known as wasuzu to begin mating. The multiplying wasuzu then bring to life the cold-resistant shrub aludon. The flowering of this plant, unremarkable in appearance, begins the long and slow process of awakening the winter Amayachins. When the winter Amayachins are near the end of their season's journey, they give birth. The new babies, protected by a hard membrane, develop in the soil. The ionic reactions of their growth change the pH level of the soil and cause other plants to germinate and grow, announcing the beginning of the planet's summer, as well as the reign of the summer Amayachins. Thus, the two intelligent species of Amayachi remain unaware of each other. Neither knows that its civilization's existence depends on the existence of the other, two sides of the same coin. Both races have composed works praising the divine wisdom of the gods, allowing them to be reborn as they awake from their slumber. But they have never realized that they're both the children called forth by the gods and the gods themselves. As for Ioahu, the situation is entirely different. On the surface of this world, the two intelligent species and their civilizations are very aware of each other's existence, yet neither is aware that the other is just like itself, possessing feelings, logic, and morality. The reason is simple. The two species exist in different frames of time. Ioahu is a planet with a strange orbit. The angle between its axis of rotation and the plane of its orbit is very small, and the axis of rotation itself precesses slowly. Thus, the surface of the planet can be divided into 4 regions. The narrow strip near the equator has night and day in accordance with the rotation of the planet, while the polar regions have their own periods of brightness and darkness based on the precession of the axis of rotation. A day near the pole is hundreds of times longer than a day near the equator, and so the creatures born in each of these regions experience time at rates hundreds of times apart. For the Iowahans, near the equator, the mysterious poles seem to have very long nights and very long days. But for the polar Iowahans, the equator passes through darkness and light rapidly, in flashes. The equatorial Iowahans are dainty and agile, with hundreds of thousands of individuals living in dense colonies. The polar Iowahans, on the other hand, have slow metabolic rates matched to their long days and long nights, and their bodies are scaled large to fit their sense of time. Sometimes the equatorial Iowahans come to the poles for adventure and exploration. They always get lost in the maze-like forests full of gigantic trees and mistake the occasional houses they encounter as unscalable cliffs. But when the polar Iowahans wander near the equator, they often miss the details and carelessly destroy the houses and fields of the equatorial Iowahans. They live on the same planet, but belong to entirely separate worlds. Sometimes the equatorial Iowahans venture to speculate that the giant creatures of the poles might also possess intelligence. But in their hearts, they believe that even if such slow-moving creatures, who in 100 years might not shift more than a few feet, were intelligent, it would be a simple and rudimentary kind of intelligence. The polar Iowahans have similar suspicions of intelligence concerning the equatorial species, but then they sigh and shake their heads, realizing that such tiny creatures that are born and die in a single day would be incapable of experiencing real civilization. And so the two intelligent species of Ioahu experience the same process of learning, working, love, and war. Their histories play out on 2 timescales, each echoing the other, but they remain opaque to each other, unaware that when it comes to time, everyone is only measuring the universe using the ruler of their own lifespan.
Wait a minute. How can you know about all these civilizations? When did you go to Amayachi? And what scale of time did you use to experience Ioahu?
I know, of course, I know. If you had been there, you would know as well. This is the difference between visitors and natives. This is the point of traveling.
It is? This is why you travel?
Yes. And no.
You are watching Abstract Passages with Ben and Chris. And you've been listening to Invisible Planets. And we're coming you from planet Earth. But Chris, where on planet Earth are we?
Well, we, right now, are located on top of Short Off Mountain in North Carolina. We are on the southern edge of the Linville Gorge, which is a national wilderness area. Very beautiful and scenic area down here. just outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
Is that the river?
That is the river, the Linville River flowing down there at the bottom.
If we're quiet, can we hear it?
Yes.
Shh.
And no.
Shh. You in cyberspace, shut up and listen. All right. Once again, you've been watching Abstract Passages with Ben.
And Chris.
Abstract Passages. Million-Year Picnic, Soft Sci-Fi Book Club. Join tomorrow. Join tomorrow. Join tomorrow.